Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Exhaust Noise on Cycle Vision Network. We have a special show for you tonight. Hopefully our guest will pop in here, but we're going to get rolling here. I have another special guest that I had planned to bring into the show a little bit later on. We're going to bring him in right away. This show, we're going to talk specifically about Daytona International Speedway. We're going to wrap up the Daytona 200. Yes, it's a couple weeks old, and yes, we've done some stuff, but we want to talk about some very specific things, which will tie into our guest if we can get him freed up and get him into the studio here. So let me do this. I'm going to bring in a very special guest. He's been the voice of Daytona. He's a legend at Daytona. He's the legendary voice of Daytona since the 1970s. He's been inducted into the Daytona 200 Monument Hall of Fame down at Daytona Beach. There are more accolades to come. He's also one of the Canadian Superbike announcers for a long time. He's been heavily involved in motorsports for a long time. He's been a mentor of mine and an idol of many. Let me introduce everybody to the one and only Mr. Pat Gonzalves. Pat, I know it's still a little bit cold up in Canada, and I know you've had a very busy day, but thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it.
Always good to get together, Kenny. Both you and I had a bit of a long drive after Daytona to get back home, but we're back home waiting for the winter to disappear so we can get on our motorcycles and start the racing season up in the northern climes.
Yeah, and I know you like to play golf, so it's going to be golf season soon. How long is the golf season for you guys? It's got to only be like a couple months.
No, it's more than that. Usually the golf course I've got a membership at Oak Ridge Golf Club. They open the first week of May, so roughly about a month after the Masters. And then they will stay open usually till the end of October. So we got a good golf season up here, but nothing like what you get in Florida. And when I was down in Daytona, interestingly enough, I did manage to bring the clubs down and golf once. And I golfed over at Riviera Golf Club, not the Riviera out in California. This is right in the middle of Daytona. And It's actually owned by the Myers family. And you can remember a racer, very good racer, by the name of William Myers. And his brother Ryan runs the golf course, great golf course. And William Myers, in fact, he put William on the phone, and I said to him after the round of golf, I said, William, it's Pat Gonzalves here. I had the honor of announcing many of your races at the Speedway, but I just left a message for him. So if you're in Daytona, you're a golfer, you bring the clubs, Riviera Golf Club, one of the places you should go check out.
I almost did that because I know you were going to have your clubs down there. I know Jason Pridmore had his clubs, and there was some other people that I knew were going to have their clubs. So I'm loading my trailer and getting my truck ready to go. I literally had my clubs in a travel bag ready to throw in there. And I just thought to myself, I'm never going to have time to play golf while I'm down there.
You were right.
Because I knew I was going to be at Roebling Road for the test that Monday, Tuesday. I knew it was going to be tough to get anything in there. We start Wednesday morning at the Daytona 200 Monument down on the beach, which rolls right into, an afternoon of media and interviews and stuff like that, Wednesday. And then you've got the dinner and everything else. And then we're on the microphone Thursday until Saturday. And so the only time I'd really get a chance to play was maybe Sunday. But then by that time, you're kind of too tired. You're ready to wrap up and get back home. And as you mentioned, I'm in the Chicago area, so it's another 20 to 25 hours back home. So, I said, you know what? I'm just going to leave him here until maybe next time when I may have had a little bit more time. I originally wanted to get down there because, Bike Week starts really the Saturday before we get down there because of the Supercross and the amateur motocross championships that are running down there, which, we used to have 2 weeks of road racing, right? We used to have the Championship Cup Series, which is now ASRA. We used to have that the first weekend. And then we had Vintage the Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday was quote unquote our day off, which we moved all the Superbike teams in. And then we would have Thursday, Friday, AMA Pro Superbikes. Saturday night was then Supercross. They would move all the Supercross teams in, get everything nice and dirty, and then we would have the Daytona 200 and maybe Supersport race on Sunday, and then everybody would bug out on Monday. So that was always, 2 weeks, and I would love to get back to that format. Right before we got on here, we were talking about the teams getting some additional testing time, and even though the Dunlop tire test is held at Roebling Road the Monday, Tuesday prior to the Daytona race, it's really not the same, is it? And that CCS weekend, ASRA amateur weekend, the weekend before, used to always act as a test for the pro guys. And, graciously enough, what they would do is they would go out and run their 5-lap race, 6-lap race, and they would pull off before the checkered flag and allow the amateurs to take the win, take the race. And, and even though you would call it as though they were going to win, because we kind of have to, because that's what's happening on the racetrack, right? We sort of knew that that the pros would give way to the amateurs to allow them to take those points home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it, Kenny. Over the years, the schedule for Daytona Bike Week and the racing schedule and the racing organizations has changed many, many times. And now we've got 3 days of road racing as opposed to as many as 8 going back many, many years ago. And I'm sure that'll continue to evolve and change. The 2-day tire test at Roebling Road, I think, was good. But of course, Roebling Road is nowhere near the racetrack that Daytona International Speedway is, including the tremendous pounding that the left side of those tires get put to the torture test with, all those high speeds. So, and as you said, there's not a whole lot of practice on Thursday before you've got to go qualify the motorcycle. And that's not the case just for the Daytona 200, but all of the other classes that ran there, including Super Hooligans, Twins Cup, and the Baggers. They get limited practice time before they've got to go and qualify the bike for the race. So I'm not sure if that's something that Motor America will look at down the road to see if they can spread things out a little bit more and afford these riders a little bit more prep time. Because when you've got that limited amount of time to get up to speed, then you see riders really starting to push it hard, maybe too soon, with limited experience on the racetrack. And I think we saw that this year. Davey Todd comes to mind, first of all, a rider, never been to Daytona before, very experienced rider, but he got involved very early in the practice sessions with his first crash, and unfortunately his second crash really took him out of the weekend, and he is still on the mend, hoping that he can be ready for things like the Isle of Man a little bit later on in the season.
Yeah, because not only did that blow his Daytona opportunities, but it may also affect his Irish Road Racing Championship, his Isle of Man bid, and everything else. And I feel so bad for the entire team because Hickey, Hickman had a similar scenario. He wasn't injured as badly, obviously, but he has a massive get off there in the qualifying session, and then a crazy crash in the race as well. And that first crash that he had, where the front brake locked up going into turn 1, that was scary. We've seen crashes on the front straightaway at Daytona before, but that was pretty scary because you just don't expect that there. And it almost makes me think that, that caliper locked or something different happened there. Cause he slid for a long, long ways. That bike was 175 plus miles an hour, and he slid all the way through the transition from the tri-oval into turn 1. That bike slid all the way over to almost, what we would call, turn 6, the entry up onto the banking.
Going on the west banking. Yep.
into like NASCAR turn one, that bike slid forever, and so did he. And even though we know that these riders are wearing the best equipment possible, that's a long way for that suit to slide, and he had to be feeling the heat through that thing. And so I didn't see it after the fact, but hopefully it held up for him and saved him some road rash.
Yeah, I chatted with him briefly on the Saturday morning, and by then his crew that had been extremely busy all week had managed to find enough spares and bits and parts from other bikes that they were able to get a motorcycle together for him. But the bike was not 100%. He wasn't 100%, and he struggled throughout that race after finishing fourth the previous year in the Daytona 200. But I think he knows what it's going to take to win there, and you've got to come there with a plan. And I would suggest, Kenny, and you've seen it in the past, and it's one of the things that John Ulrich and Team Hammer always do. They come to Daytona in October and use what was for a long time the CCS and ASRA weekend. There's a team challenge. You can run extended laps. You can test fuel mileage. You can test tire wear, and really use that fall cycle scene race program in October to shake down the equipment. They also run the Team Hammer School, additional track time available that day. So I think if any rider coming to Daytona for the first time thinks that they can go into qualifying out of one, maybe two practice sessions, it's just not going to happen. You've got to invest the time and effort and expenses to come there in October, get a feel for the racetrack, maybe go out there with an experienced rider and enter in the Team Hammer School, and let one of the experienced riders who are always part of the Team Hammer lineup of riders take you around the racetrack and show you the lines around there, because it is not a racetrack that you learn and really go truly fast on in just a couple of days.
Yeah, and a couple of riders that have done that in the past and have had some luck is Gary Johnson, who's another Isle of Man TT rider, and 99. Oh my gosh, the other Suzuki rider from over there.
Not 199. Yeah, he ended up crashing out on the race on Sunday, and also drawing a mental
Saturday.
blank on.
I'll go to my qual. I'm looking at the results, and he's not in the results from Saturday because he didn't make it in. You're right. So 199.
Well, he got
Danny Webb.
Yeah, Danny Webb. He got taken out on that second lap crash that brought out the red flag. So they had one lap completed for the entire field. So they actually ran a 56 lap, approximately 197 mile race to get to the 200. But Danny Webb was showing some pretty good pace on the Suzuki. But overall, it'd be interesting to look at the motorcycle racing publications over in England. It was just an absolutely disastrous Daytona, pretty much for all of the Brits and the other riders who ventured over there to run.
Yeah, and it's really sad to see. I listened to a handful of different podcasts that are based in the UK, and they often talk about, they'll have interviews with guys like Neil McKenzie, and it just makes me flash back to some of the Daytona 200s that you were a part of, where it was really an international race, right? The HB Honda machines, which was the factory Honda superbikes, would be here, and you'd have Neil McKenzie, Rob McElnay, even some of the European, British GP riders, 500, 250 GP guys would come over and race the International 250, the Intercontinental 250. What do you remember from back in those days, and with just how much of an international race that was? I remember I mean, really for a long time, they had an entire garage that was just international riders from Germany, Japan, and so on.
Yeah. I went there for the first time in 1974. That was the first year that the Yamaha TZ 700/750 came out, and Giacomo Agostini, who is a multi-time world champion, ended up winning it on the Yamaha. And that was Yamaha's first victory ever in the Daytona 200. They, of course, this coming year in 2027 are going to be celebrating their 55th anniversary of their very first Daytona 200 win. Hopefully they do some big things at the Speedway to celebrate that milestone, as BMW did with the very first Superbike race in 1976 when they had Reg Pridmore and Steve McLaughlin there. Kenny, I know you didn't get a chance to catch the dinner on Saturday night, but a couple of things that really hit home for me. It was incredibly well organized. The food was fabulous. And we had a number of different dignitaries speaking, but it was great to hear from Steve McLaughlin and Reg Pridmore. Gary Fisher's daughter was there to say a few words on behalf of the Fisher family. And that is such an amazing, it was an amazing event. And I'm really glad that all of the organizers put it all together. That fan zone was so busy throughout the entire weekend. People talking to the riders, talking to Udo Giedel. And I just hope that we continue to celebrate those kinds of milestones coming up. And you and I have already spoken about this. It's Steve Baker's 50th anniversary of his 77 win in the Daytona 200. It's the 40th anniversary for a guy by the name of Wayne Rainey. So those are just a couple of the things we've got to celebrate and embrace the history and heritage of the Daytona 200. And hopefully some of that will happen next March. But the European contingent, the top riders in the world, when I came here in 74, they were all there. And that pretty much continued right through till the late 80s. And then the Superbike class stopped attracting as it switched to Superbikes, because that hadn't quite taken over in Europe as yet. The first World Superbike race didn't happen until 1988. And so I think the caliber of riders sort of waned there in the late 80s into the early 90s. And then we had a couple of riders come on the scene by the name of Miguel Duhamel and Scott Russell. Duhamel starting in 91, Scott Russell starting in 92, and they really dominated the next decade and a half. Russell winning 5 races in 7 years, Duhamel winning his 5 over 15 years. So that was really the dominant era. And then as we got into the early 2000s, things switched again, and we moved from the big 1,000cc superbikes to the middleweight class Formula Extreme, and then later on, Super Sport and sport bikes, where, as of the last few years, we're running the Motor America Super Sport class in the Daytona 200. And those bikes, I think, are pretty much faster than those Yamaha TZ 750s that ran back in the 70s and early 80s. So the technology marches on. I'm not sure how soon we'll be running electric bikes in the Daytona 200. We're running them now in Super Hooligans. So we will see what happens. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this year's Daytona 200 Bike Week. Amazing, incredible racing. So much else going on. Had the opportunity, as you did, to be part of the Daytona 200 Monument celebration. And then you were at the Speedway.
And let's not skip over that too much, where we inducted 12 more people into the monument, and guys that were and we no women this year, but a lot of guys that were instrumental and part of the Daytona story. Guys like David Graham, who was an announcer for a long time and a paddock announcer. Guys like Tim Tucker, who's one of the ASRA, CCS starters, and there, I really loved that because there was so many families there who were so proud of their father, their husband, and what they had done in the industry. And what really struck me was that the biographies that we read during the induction ceremonies, it just came down to the fact that the people that were being inducted there, that were part of this industry, part of that event for so long, just loved racing, and they just loved people. And similar to us, Daytona was always sort of their mecca, right? It was just, once they got back to Florida, once they got to Daytona Speedway, that's where they felt like that was home for them. And I just love those personal family stories, and just how much the family was embracing the history of their loved one as a part of their racing journey, and the fact that they wanted to memorialize them in the monument. It was really emotional, and I just love being there. And for anybody that hasn't done that yet, it is on Wednesday. There's a lot of happening at the Speedway. It conflicts with a lot of things on that Friday, on that Wednesday morning. But we really need to figure out how we get more people a part of that, because it is such an important part of celebrating Daytona and its history and the personalities that come with it.
Yeah. I mean, that Wednesday event, the Gathering of Champions, Kenny, is really an unveiling of a plaque that has the photograph and the words and the memories that are near and dear to the heart of that motorcyclist. But something that Steve McLaughlin said during the week that he was there, and Steve is one of the real great guys, and boy, I think he was just as happy over those 3 days, looking back at that win in 1976 by inches over Jason Pridmore's dad, Reg. What a thrilling finish. But Steve said we should be recognizing and celebrating these people while they're still with us here on Earth. And I wholeheartedly agree with him. Yeah. How many great riders, how many great people in motorcycling, not just road racing, but there are plaques up there on the monument for flat track racers, drag racers, mechanics, people who in their own way, with their own gifts, have made an impact on the sport and motorcycling. Let's celebrate them now when they can be there to celebrate that joy. And hopefully Al Charles and Christy Clamforth are going to see many more of those plaques go up. Of course, every time someone wins a Daytona 200, their plaque goes up. There's one there for Duhamel with his 5 wins. There's one there for Scott Russell with his 5 wins. And I'm sure the one for Josh Herrin is going to be going up. And Kenny, you and I have been talking about this ever since that Sunday afternoon. Now the stage is set to have Miguel Duhamel and Scott Russell at Daytona next March to witness firsthand if, in fact, Josh Herrin can become the all-time winningest Daytona 200 rider with a 6th championship as he goes after it. I assume he'll be going after it. And boy, we were talking about some of these incredible documentary series that have been done for other sports. I would absolutely love to see one of those done following Josh Herrin's attempt at winning a 6th Daytona 200 and 5 in a row. 4 in a row's never been done. 5 in a row's never been done, and neither has 6 overall. And there's so many other.
Let's go back to last year. 3 in a row had never been done.
Yeah.
So
and the other thing, there's so many other storylines that could be followed there. Kayla Yakov winning or finishing 3rd, the first woman to finish on the podium at the Daytona 200. You've got so many other talented youngsters. like the Dreher kids. And boy,
Yep.
they were both finishing in the top 20. So I think American road racing is right on the verge of a big explosion. And hopefully we're going to see that this season in Moto America with some of the great stories and all of the media coverage on a rider like Kayla Yakov and someone like Josh Herrin, who continues to impress. So
Yeah.
looking forward to Road Atlanta. And I guess this weekend we've got MotoGP at Coda, where the Talent Cup will run. And the other thing you and I have been talking about is this new MotoGP Bagger Series with the Harley Davidsons. How many motorcycles are going to be on the grid, and what's the racing going to look like?
Yeah, it should be interesting, right? I think the most that we've seen is 9 motorcycles. So
Yep,
we
I
could
believe.
we could be surprised by that, but it looks like there will be 9 of them. And the last, folks can go back to one of my last couple of podcasts where I broke that down with how many per team and which teams were taking part in that. If you want to go back and look for that podcast, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, certainly we would love to see 20 motorcycles out there versus 9, but it is what it is. We need to start somewhere. And so yeah, we'll see what happens there. I was really disappointed. Just to go back to the Daytona 200 real quick, I was really disappointed with the fact that we didn't see more Canadians. And we had some conversations in when we were in Daytona that perhaps that was because some of the Canadian teams are contracted to a Bridgestone tire deal because that's the spec tire in Canada, and Dunlop has a Dunlop. I mean, and Daytona has a Dunlop requirement through America, and so maybe some of the teams didn't come because of that. So we would have liked to see more Canadians. There was really one Canadian rider there. So, hopefully we'll see that worked out a little bit. And certainly we've had more international talent there than we've seen in a little bit, but it was missing what usually we get about 10 Canadians or so that come down. Yeah.
We have had in recent years as many as that when it was an open tire rule. And not just the Bridgestone riders, a rider like Stefano Mesa wasn't there. Any of the Pirelli riders. I'm not sure if there are any riders running Michelin rubber, but all of the other tire manufacturers, their riders weren't going to be there. And because the Canadian Superbike and Super Sports Series all runs on the Bridgestones, none of those riders were back to come down to Daytona. So I know like Ben Young, who has had some great rides in the 200, a number of top 10 finishes. He was off training in Costa Rica. He wasn't able to make it down. And Trevor Daly, who had raced in the past with Ben on those Bridgestone Suzukis, he was actually part of the crew working with PJ Jacobson on Team Rahal. And he's also the guy that makes a lot of the quick change equipment that many of the teams use. So we'll see. I have a feeling that Moto America will continue to keep the Daytona 200 as the opening round of the series, which means you've got to run the Dunlop spec tire. And it'll be a matter of do they continue with the Monday, Tuesday test at Roebling Road, or do they look at perhaps something in October? Or it was years ago, Kenny, when Dunlop would run a separate, usually early December, a separate 2-day tire test at Daytona with many of the top teams there. So we'll see what happens. While I've got a moment, and I don't forget our good friend Dan Kruger, who has raced with some of the best Isle of Man and Macau Grand Prix and Northwest 200 riders. Dan was in Daytona helping out Peter Hickman and Davey Todd. Unfortunately, when he got to Daytona, he had to go visit Davey Todd in hospital over at the Halifax Hospital. He was in the hospital for about another week So he flew back to England about a week ago. And in the text that I got from Dan Kruger, he says that definitely not the Northwest 200 because that happens before. He's hoping for the Isle of Man, but that is still a question mark right now because he had a pretty nasty crash. He had 2 operations while he was there, and just a very, very sad way to start as a Daytona 200 rookie. I don't think he even got in 20 laps.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad crash. I mean, it was pretty scary. I mean, let's be honest though. Almost every crash at Daytona is scary just because of the sheer speed. And you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the speed and lap times that we saw. Of course, what we see on the graphic, not to call out the Moto America folks, but they continue to run the old race distance on their race graphics. The race distance at Daytona since they cut the new pit road and racetrack and everything else, the race distance there is 3.51 miles.
That's correct.
They just recently did a remod on the chicane, and some people have said that it doesn't affect the lap times at all. However, that being said, when we look at the lap times, they are a little bit slower this year than they were in the last 2 years. Daytona 200 qualifying a couple of years ago with Richie Escalante, 1:47.833. Josh Herrin went 1:47.87. Herrin also did a 48.331 in the past. Valentin DeBeese, 48.6. And we get to this year's and Ty Scott, and with so much news coming out of Daytona on Saturday with Josh Herrin and Kayla Yakoff and Darren Binder and everybody else, a lot of people have sort of swept the fact under the rug that Tyler Scott took pole position again. And on the Team Hammer M4 X-Star Suzuki, a 48.9 was his fastest lap in the time attack. PJ Jacobson was second fastest, a 48.9. And then Josh Herrin was third fastest to round out the front row, a 49.4. These lap times are almost a full second off of what we saw last year and the year before. Did you see anything specific that you thought would contribute to that, Pat?
Yeah, I don't think whatever minor tweak they did at the chicane would have changed a whole lot there with the lap times.
But sometimes it's just a headwind coming down the back straight that because it's so long.
Yeah, or a certain crosswind that are buffeting the riders around. So I mean, the times there are pretty close, and I mean, when you look at just how close they qualified together, that indicated we have a multi-rider battle up front, which we did once we got through that red flag on lap 2, and then we had positions were being swapped all over the racetrack. Some rider would be back there in, 4th place in the group, and he'd get a triple draft and go right to the front. So in the early part of that race, it doesn't get any better. They were swapping and trading places all over the racetrack. But I was in the media center on Saturday, and obviously Josh Herrin was long gone. Nobody was going to catch him, but everybody was closely watching that battle for third between Darren Binder and Kayla Yakoff. And you and I have been to Daytona. You've raced in it, and you've announced that. I've only announced it. That dash from the chicane to the checkered flag on the last lap. The rule of thumb is you do not want to be the rider leading going into the chicane. And I'm not sure if Binder and Yakoff were playing around on that last lap. You take the lead. No, you take the lead. But whatever it was, Binder made the mistake of leading coming out of the chicane, and you could almost tell how that story was going to end. Kayla put on a classic draft, got him coming off of turn 4 of the super speedway, and went by Binder. And once you go by that late in the tri-oval, there's no way you're going to be able to go back around.
No.
A well-deserved third place finish. But I was extremely impressed with Kayla. I think she has taken her riding to a whole new level, and she credits all the work she's done earlier this year in January and February in Florida, riding almost every day, working out. I've never seen her as fit or as strong as she is right now. And you know what? And people
and she gives credit to PJ Jacobsen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one disgruntled race fan, I won't give his name, sent me a text that, she finished in third just because she's so much lighter than these guys. Well, she not really is. No. She might be a little bit, but that is just raw riding talent. And
you watch those last 2 laps and tell me that she didn't have those laps planned out. Let's keep it all in perspective. She's a teammate with PJ Jacobsen, one of the best riders in North America, who's done this race several times and almost, was on the podium himself this year. He qualified second. She's teammates with Josh Herrin, who, has now won it 5 times. He had won it, 3 years in a row. They're riding the same motorcycle, right? And keep in mind, their team manager is Ben Spies, who also knows his way around Daytona Speedway. There had to have been long conversations and watching video, just knowing how those guys prepare themselves, Ben Spies and everybody else. That they've watched decades and decades and decades of Daytona 200 finishes, and she knew exactly what her plan was. With probably 5 laps to go, the way you know that is on her last lap. She was staying, you could see she was staying full throttle, and she didn't just stay right behind him. She took the high line to hang herself out in the draft, knowing that once they came down onto the flat, she'd be able to catch that draft at full throttle and ricochet right by him, and that he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And with the argument that she's lighter, I don't know if they've ever stood next to Darren Binder, but he's not a big guy. No. He's not that heavy, and he's pretty lean himself. He's a Moto 2 guy from Europe, and he's they're on basically the same motorcycle. I mean, Binder and her are almost the same height, and she might be a little bit lighter, but not much.
Yeah.
She won that. She won that podium position on racecraft, and racecraft alone. She was prepared, and you're right. I think she's in the best shape and the most prepared that she's been yet. And keep in mind, she's still only 19 years old.
Yeah. And I'll make this prediction, Kenny. That's not going to be her only podium this year. She's going to win multiple podiums with the talent that she's shown. And I think that third place finish at Daytona is going to give her even more confidence. And I would not put the possibility that if it all falls together, she could very well win one of the super sport races this year. We'll see what happens. And
and certainly, one of the stories coming out of this winter was the fact that Josh Herrin was didn't only shift Ducati teams from the Celtic Racing Warhorse HSBK Ducati team over to the Rahal Racing team, but he's going to be in that super sport field for the season. He has to. I mean, previous podcast, I predicted he's going to win the championship. I don't know that there's anybody else in that class besides Kayla that might give him a run for his money. I think Blake Davis could certainly do it. I don't think that DeMario is to his level yet. And some of the guys that were super competitive in that class are now bumped up riding Superbike. So you have Skoltz that's in Superbike now. You have PJ Jacobsen, who was riding a 600 or in the Super Sport class last year, who's on a Superbike for the remainder of the season. And one of the things I really wanted to ask Josh Herrin in this show was whether, is what he predicted for Superbike, since he wasn't going to be in that class, this year. What does he predict? Who does he think is going to be the toughest competition? Because you have JD Beach and Bobby Fong, who are extremely strong on the Attack Yamaha. You've got Robbie Peterson, who's helping his son, who's helping his son Cam Peterson now on the Wrench Ducati Superbike team. He's actually riding Josh Herrin's motorcycle from last year, so we know it's competitive. And so there's going to be a lot of really competitive Superbike riders this year, really, with just the one exception of Josh Herrin. But we've inserted another couple guys from the Supersport class, and Brandon Posh is back, to give it a run as well. So it's going to be really, really competitive in the Superbike class. But I think more than, but I think that it's going to be competitive in Supersport as well. But I just don't know that anybody is going to be able to touch Josh Herrin in that class on that motorcycle.
Kenny, I'm going to have to wrap up right now. But before I go, you mentioned the Supersport Championship. One guy I think that you're overlooking is Tyler Scott. There's a kid who 100%. Has finished on the podium, I believe, the last 3 years at Daytona. He comes into the next round sitting second in the championship right behind Josh Herrin. So
absolutely. And just a heartbreak that he, again, I mean, I really, really, really want him to win the Daytona 200. I love the storyline of Josh Herrin winning. And all credit to him. I was super excited for him as well. But Tyler Scott's due. He's due for a great season, and hopefully he'll be able to give it a good run in Supersport this year, and give it another run at the Daytona 200 next year. So apology to everybody. Angela Heba, thanks for joining us. Angela, she was helping out with
good seeing her at Daytona. She was keeping me organized and on my toes.
There you go. She was helping us with remembering Danny Webb. So thanks Angela for that. But so apologies to everybody. We had Josh Herrin scheduled to be on the show. I've got a whole script of questions for him, so we'll line that up and we'll get it going. So, but my apologies to everybody for not having that. But Pat Gonzalves, thanks so much for stepping in and being here. Good thing I had you booked as well. But I look forward to being able to follow up with you and get Josh on the line. We also have Kayla Yakoff, who's queued up, just waiting for her schedule to free up just a little bit. She's been back and forth testing and a lot of travel for her. So as soon as she gets settled in, we're going to have her on the show as well. And we're starting a series of road race podcasts here. So we'll be able to have, bring everybody some good interviews from some of the top riders in the sport. And we're going to be doing a lot of live interviews as well. So we have stuff lined up from local dealerships. And of course, Road America is coming up the last week of May. We're going to do a ton of live shows live from Road America with some of the stars of the sport from one of the greatest racing facilities in all of North America. So Pat, again, thank you so much for all of your mentorship. It's always good to see your face and good to be with you. Thanks for just your wealth of knowledge and history from Daytona. It's just so valuable, and you've been so valuable to the sport. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Kenny, always good to be on with you. But before I go, my Canadian race fans are going to be all over me if I don't give a shout out to Dylan Bauer, who was the only Canadian, had a pretty good run, finishing 17th, picks up some nice American dollars to help pay for his season up here in Ontario. Yes. So congratulations to Dylan Bauer. When I was on the grid there doing the tribute to my late announcing partner, Richard Chambers, gave him a little fist pump, and he had a pretty solid race. Wasn't the fastest, but had some consistent minute 54s, minute 55s, and got him to the finish 17th in the Daytona 200.
Yep. And for those that want to catch that, I actually did an interview with him in his garage after the fact. Just scroll through Facebook or YouTube, and you'll see my interview with him. It's about a 2.5-3 minute interview with him. So Well, Pat, I know you've got to go. So thank you so much.
Kenny.
I'm going to stay on and sign off. Thanks again for being with us. And we'll catch you here soon, man. Thank you very much. And Goy, and hopefully you'll be able to get on the golf course soon as well.
Yeah. Okay. Looking forward to that. Take care, Kenny. All the best, and all the best to all of your fans.
Thank you very much, Pat. We'll talk to you soon. So that's the legendary Pat Gonzalves. Again, we apologize. We had Josh Herrin lined up, ready to go, and obviously something came up there, but we'll get him on. And we've got some good questions. I wanted to talk to him. I actually have, I don't know if you guys can see, I actually have some collectibles back here. Josh is a big collector, and that's one of the things I was going to talk to him about. And he was asking me specifically if I still had any of the Jordan trading cards that we did back in the day. And so I had to dig through some boxes and came up with some trading cards. We actually have some of the trading cards before they get cut. So limited run of these cards as well. And so anyway, I got a bunch of fun stuff for Josh to pick through when we get to Road America. But I was going to talk to him because obviously he's not only collects really cool cards and other fun collectibles, but he's been collecting Rolex chronograph watches from Daytona International Speedway, and now he has 5 of them. So we were gonna talk a little bit about that. So anyway, since we don't have Josh, and Mr. Gonzalves had to run and get him to his family event, I will wrap up. And we just want to thank you for everything that you do for us. There's a handful of fans that watch all of our shows and support us, and we thank you so much. We want to definitely thank those that support us. One of the things I really want to talk about here at the end of the podcast, again, we apologize that the guests we didn't have the guests that we had promised on Facebook, but for those that are in the industry, we have 2 goals. One is get one more person on a motorcycle this year, and get one more person to the racetrack this year. That's all we ask. Get one more person on a motorcycle, get one more person to the racetrack, and you've done your job. And then let's continue to encourage everybody to buy their motorcycle parts and accessories and apparel from local dealerships and trackside vendors, because we cannot afford for that commerce to go outside of our community. We can't afford for that commerce to go online. If you're buying it online, buy it online from a dealership or a trackside vendor, so that we can contribute to their economy. We can keep them supporting our sport locally. They need that. They deserve that, and we really need that to continue happening. So anyway, thank you. Thanks to those that have been supporting us, including 2 a.m. Tacos, Two Brothers Roundhouse here in Aurora, the Power Sports Store, my guy Les down in Cincinnati. Man, I love you, and I know you've got some stuff going on down there, and you're transitioning to something different. But man, we really appreciate you. Michael Kachalka with Bison Track Gear, thank you for your support over the years. We appreciate it. And that's going to wrap it up for us. So again, buy all of your gear, all of your parts, accessories, and apparel from local dealerships, and support the sport so that we can keep this thing going. A lot going on. We got MotoGP this weekend, Supercross coming up in Detroit. A lot going on. Make sure you catch all of our shows. We'll preview and recap all that stuff this next weekend coming up. Until then, my name's Kenny Abbott. This is Exhaust Noise on Cycle Vision Network. Now it's time to gear up, head out, ride safe, everybody.